Hi, Dr. Romie. Thank you so much for being on the Emotional Eats podcast.
Kim, I am elated to be here and celebrate your community. I relate not only professionally as a doctor, but personally as a woman in her midlife and being raised in a culture where food was used to placate every emotion that exists.
Oh, this is going to be such a great
Yeah.
conversation. I want to start with you, though, and I'd love to know more about your background. And like you said, you were talking about food already in your early years. Talk about that background a little bit. And then
Yeah.
also, you were in traditional medicine before you really even started talking about the stress management.
Yeah. Yeah. So I am a proud daughter of immigrants. English is my third language. My mother and father came to the United States in the 1960s, and I am their firstborn. And there was a success mantra that was like just announced in the newborn nursery from my father to anyone that would listen. I have one daughter and she will become a doctor. And that was the success and the excellence. I know some people cringe when they hear that, but when you're raised in a level of excellence, I think I equated academic excellence to same of children that are raised by athletes and the children become athletes. You're just raised in that. Instead of going to sports practice every day, I read encyclopedias and did extra math and science homework. And my dad is also a doctor. And so this was, you know, all planned and executed by my mother and a tribe of aunties. And so every emotion, so if I was talking too much, it was go read something in the encyclopedia. And when I came back and regurgitated what I learned, good girl, I would get a piece of chocolate. If I got a B plus or A minus in school, it was a tragic, drama filled day. There was like the she's upset food to cook, and any emotion by myself or any family member on the spectrum for feeling bad to good, all those emotions, they were celebrated by food. And then there were those foods that were comfort foods that were tied to positive family memories. And so food is something that is so important to me, but I understand both ends of the spectrum of we can be taught patterns early on that, we self medicate with food, yet we miss the mark. As a neurologist today, specializing in integrative medicine, the strict protocols that exist, and you and I will unpack this, are furthering the trauma, the guilt and shame cycles, and nor do they promote inclusivity. And so I think that's why I'm here today. I didn't get to the second part of my story. You can help me dig that one out a little bit more because I'm just so geeked out to talk to you about food.
I love it. Well, I also was just wondering how you even moved from this traditional medicine
Yeah.
to focusing on stress management because we're going to dig into this today. We have a real societal issue with stress right now. And
Mhm.
it's not just a couple people, it's really
A
everyone. And
pandemic.
you
Yeah.
have really honed in on that and even written a book about it. So how did you get
Yeah.
to this point?
I say I wrote The Busy Brain Cure because I suffered through my mess so I can prevent you from getting stuck in yours. And I think really the message I want to share with listeners on behalf of Kim and I today is if you've come to this particular episode and you're feeling alone, we're both here for you and with you and alongside your journey without judgment. Because I remember being that doctor. I made it. I entered neurology at a time where less than 5% of the brain doctors were women in this country and loved my job. And on the outside, it looked pretty and polished and designer stilettos and a starched white lab coat. And not only was I seeing patients, I was doing cutting edge research and I was teaching medical students. And I was in a really dark place and suffering. And this is like 15 plus years ago. We didn't have terms like mental health crisis in the workplace. That wasn't allowed to be spoken with professionals, let alone the term burnout. All I know is I was in a dark place and it was starting to show. And I would walk the hospital corridors, and Kim, not a single person asked if I was okay. I felt really lonely. You could tell I was suffering. People were gossiping about me, but nobody asked. And I then just kept pushing myself like so many listeners do today. Listen, we pay mortgage, we take care of children, you take care of elderly loved ones, all the things. And this ain't no podcast about girl, eat berries, breathe, look at another Instagram reel of puppies hugging on each other. No, this is me telling you chronic stress can cause disease. Chronic stress can kill you. It almost killed me, and I should have known better. I'm a brain doctor, and that's why I'm here today. And as I shared in my TED Talk in 2014, I ended up in life-saving surgery. And in that moment, I'm in the hospital recovering, going, nothing I've learned in medical school is going to help me now. What do I do? And so here we are with the cure to the busy brain.
Yes, and I really enjoyed reading it because
Thank you.
there's so much explanation, and you feel less alone by reading it because obviously this was a need. This is something you saw all the time, and then the tips are amazing. And I want to go back actually to something you just said in the beginning. You were talking about being the good girl. You were talking about doing what your parents were told. And I have so many clients coming in that are people pleasers because they had someone who had such high expectations on them that they have grown up. And that is all they hear even now. So when they are trying to take care of their health, their brain is going 100 miles an hour and they're just thinking, I just need to eat less. I need to exercise more. I'm going to have willpower and I'm going to be the perfect good girl with this.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on
Thank
that?
you. Thank you for thinking I was a good girl because I have two younger brothers and my parents will both tell you that all of their gray hair was done by me. So I'm also the oldest child, the only daughter, the firstborn to immigrants. So I proudly will say I'm probably also the shiny black sheep of the family dressed up in Jimmy Choo, is I am also the only divorcee. It freaked them out when I became an entrepreneur. And I definitely talked back and all of that. So I think it's there could be a people pleasing side, but there's also the rebel side in me that has fueled me, I think, to be a successful entrepreneur today.
That's great.
So we're not all, one category as you know, and we share with your listeners. But that good girl people pleasing side, I actually will tell you, I enjoyed the math and science. So I didn't feel like I was doing something that I never wanted to do. Um, I see it differently that in a time in the 1970s and 80s in the United States in a public school system where it was unheard of to foster girls in science, technology, engineering, math, and medicine, I was blessed to have a support system that was in the schools. Like, no, do not waste my daughter's time in this home economics class. We'll teach her to make pancakes at home. You put her in honors chemistry, right? Like that was, I think I had advocates. Now, girl, I ain't gonna lie. I'm divorced and I'm single and I still don't know how to make the pancakes. And so maybe I need to rethink that at this stage in my life. But
I
I
think you've done well. You'll find someone to make that pancake for you.
girl, yes, I'll double click on that. So I think that, but to your point of people pleasing and being the good girl, do you know where that actually came in was? Having to conform as a woman and a woman of color in the traditional medical system and being white male, straight white male adjacent. Um, that was what was suffocating to me. I excelled in medicine. I excelled, in residency. You read in chapters 6 and 7, my incredible mentors, Dr. Pritchard and Dr. Wanamaker, and about Southern comfort food. But I think as I got out into practice and you realize like, yet again, I'm the only person in the room, the only woman, often the only person of color, the only person of a diverse background. And my experience and that exhaustion of trying to be something I wasn't. And could I tell you one small memory that I have that I knew that was the point I should have recognized it pushed me over the edge?
Yes.
That I was working on a slow day, 10-hour days, on most days, 12 to 14 hours. And I'm aging myself, sister. But this is in the days before streaming networks, before DVRs or TiVo, we had something known as a VCR. Please put a note in your show links to the
For you younger
Google page of
people, yes.
what is a VCR, and you would have to program your VCR to record. And so I would record the Oprah Winfrey show. She is one of my heroes. My mom,
Yes.
I feel like she helped raise us with her show. And I would come home from a long work day and just want to sit in mismatched pajamas and watch Oprah and feel like there was a sister at the end of the day. But in order to get along with my male colleagues at the same time before I went to bed was ESPN Sports Center. And I'm like, there ain't going to be nobody in the hospital, Kim, that I can share. Oh my God. Did you see Madonna was on Oprah yesterday? No, I had to pretend to enjoy sports so that I could have a conversation with colleagues and join in. And look, we all make adjustments. That's one of many examples that, and you read some of those things in the book, but they kept building. And I think that was the things, the tiny things in life, that rituals that give you joy that I was pushing aside to conform. That was the people pleasing era of myself when I was in the professorship right before I got sick and puked on my Prada.
Oh my gosh. That is a story. I love this though, because you are really sharing what a lot of people still do in their daily life is they're hiding parts of themselves. They're having a really hard time being authentically themselves where they are. I think it's getting better, but I do think there's always a space where we have these hidden parts, and the more and more we stuff those down, the more and more the emotions and the
Yeah.
feelings and the stress builds. Everything comes to the surface at some point in some form. And to bring this back to food for the listeners, that's one place where it comes out. And
Yes.
I
Oh,
love that because I
oh,
would
yes.
it's funny, I was the math girl before I went into
Oh,
nutrition. I was a high school
yes.
math teacher,
Oh,
and
I
yes,
love that.
but I had imposter syndrome. I didn't think I was smart enough, and I was like, "Well, who am I to be an honors math teacher?" And I had these feelings at home like, "Well, somebody's gonna find out that I'm not smart enough." I mean, I could sit up there and teach the class, I could do whatever, but I had those imposter feelings, and that's when I would eat. That's when I would comfort
Thank you
myself.
for sharing. Oh my God. It hurts me as a fellow sister in STEM because we women are programmed at such a young age, like as early as kindergarten, to think our brains, even today in 2024,
Yes.
that we're not wired to, excel in science, technology, engineering, math, and medicine. And it stays with us in our adult lives. And to your point, we can medicate with food. And I admit that in the book. Here I am, a doctor, and I should know better. And I was sustaining myself on three key food groups: wine, chocolate, and coffee.
Yes.
And if I
Yes.
was going to eat healthy, I remember it was these Kashi cereals. They were labeled healthy on the outside. Do you remember
Yes.
those? In a
Yes.
box, processed food back then, because we're going back then to the DVR, pre
Right.
DVR era, Kashi cereal. I would eat half the box of cereal while I was watching ESPN and that. So it wasn't like one cup serving. I would eat half the box in one sitting.
Oh, I can relate. I can relate. It's really easy. It's that, and this is a perfect way to really tie in what you talk about with the busy brain because we're distracted. We find so many different ways to distract ourselves. So it's no wonder the food goes down mindlessly. We are completely distracted, and I'd love for you to talk about too this societal distraction that we have
Mhm.
right now.
Yeah.
What are you seeing, and how much of this is being contributing to all of our stress issues from the everything from, maybe glorifying it to just technology?
Yeah. All of it. And you're right. Here's what I call it: the busy brain. And The busy brain is when we're living in this chronic stress. And you and I both allude to it in our early careers, of me being a professor in medicine and doctor, and you as a math teacher, is we were always wanting another success metric. And so we were stressing ourselves out. However, that would show up. You call it imposter syndrome. I had such a harsh, critical inner critic that you read in the early chapters of my book, of the negative voices of my Indian aunties judging me anytime, I was under stress. And so what happens there is we have a pattern of neuroinflammation that happens in the brain, specifically an area I call the airport traffic control tower of the brain, the hypothalamus and the SCN nucleus. This controls our circadian rhythm. Think of the airport traffic control tower. You and I both live in Florida. So to get anywhere, we have to take a connecting flight, let's say in Atlanta, the busiest airport in the world.
Yep.
If there is rain in Atlanta, the airport traffic control tower grounds all the flights and doesn't allow any other flights to take off or come in. Well, it's not only a problem in Atlanta, that's a global airport connected to LA, New York, Hong Kong, London, Dubai, Amsterdam. So within seconds or minutes, all these flights are delayed or canceled. Okay. That's exactly how our brain works under chronic stress. And then it not only disturbs our sleep wake cycle when you hear circadian rhythm, but brain shift the protocol. The H is hormones. And specifically, not only our sex hormones and thyroid, but our hunger hormones. And then also that then triggers the stress hormone problem. So there's like this entire cascade that happens. Like, think of this, you're grounded in Atlanta, so you missed your connecting flight and you can't get to Amsterdam. And then you have to wait 3 days to get to Amsterdam. And then the cruise left without you, right? That's exactly what's happening. This cascade of hormones from your brain to your thyroid, to your adrenals, to your gut and your kidneys. So this is the stress eating, why some people crave salty foods, because under stress, they're wasting minerals. Some people crave sweets, their blood sugar modulation. Some people want both. And that is the stress eating. And then what happens is we medicate ourselves with food so that will alter our electrolyte and blood sugar levels. But also there's that emotional part to it. I need to comfort myself. I've had a bad day. I'm going through something hard. I'm going to eat. That dopamine reward gives you that instant joy. But guess what happens is, like a hit of drug, that sugar or that salty food, you come down and you're like, let me have another chip, another cookie, another slice of pizza. And that's where we go wrong. That's stress eating. I alluded to in my opening comfort food and the importance of that. Those are two separate things that you and I are going to unpack, because it was important to me that we left comfort food in our lives.
Ooh, I think that's so important. I love the air traffic controller analogy. And when I read that, I was like, wow, this makes things so much easier to understand how much the brain and that stress can impact every part of our body. And we will get into brain shift, but I love the idea that you talk about in the book that comfort food is okay.
Yes.
And it's different than when we're doing these binge and stress eating, because I even think about, well, think about culturally. You have food that is comfortable, that is traditional. And so when people are dieting, they're giving up even traditional foods. They're
Yes.
giving up memories. They're giving up experiences. So, yes, please share more about that.
So I think one of the love languages is food. Anywhere you go in the world, food is typically tied to core memories of joy. If you're listening to this podcast right now, you're going to hear me ask him, and I want to ask you, and tag us on social media and tell me about a food you remember from a point in your life. In the book, I share about my maternal grandmother, my nanny's lamb biryani, and how when she cooked it, the aroma was in like the entire alley of all the houses, and it would bring neighbors and feuding families to sit down. You could taste the love in that awesome lamb biryani, and it would heal ancestral like feuds. Do you have a food like that that you remember when I say comfort food?
Well, it's funny you said that. I don't have a meal. My
Uh-huh.
kids do. I'm actually interviewing
Oh,
my
yes.
kids tonight on
Ah,
all of this. And but mine was, believe it or not, Hershey's chocolate, because I
yes.
said to my mom, I said, "Hey, why is it that I only want Hershey's chocolate with almonds and I don't want Godiva or Lindt
Mhm.
or all of these beautiful chocolates that I could choose from?" And she said, "Oh, that's because when you were little, I gave you Hershey chocolate because my dad was a traveling salesman and he gave them to me when he came home." So she basically passed
Oh,
Hershey's chocolate down.
tradition.
Yes, and
Oh,
I
I
asked,
love
isn't that
that.
sweet?
Now,
So
do you
even
give your kids Hershey chocolates
I
with almonds?
did. That is
I
all I ever gave them, and it's funny because we talk about it now, and my son will always say when he comes home, my kids moved from Florida to Denver, and, he always, when he comes back, will pick the funniest, I'm telling you, this is the most basic unhealthy meal, but we would have pasta Monday because when I had to cook for 4 kids
oh my
at
gosh,
one time,
girl,
it's school-age kids,
girl,
like, Monday night was pasta night because it was
girl,
easy, and I
yes,
could throw a Caesar salad together with it,
yes,
and I was like,
yes, girl.
health coach out the window, we are just
Right?
eating."
Yeah,
So,
we're eating, but
that's
that's
his
Mondays,
comfort. Yeah, that was his
right?
comfort.
There you go. And so, see, can you're hearing this podcast, but can you hear the shift in energy of joy in Kim and Mai's voice?
Yes.
That's a core memory of joy that's
So
tied to
true.
food. And when we put people on a diet or restrictive cleanse, and it's called your cheat meal,
Oh,
joy is not cheating. I
no,
call it
that's so
your
negative.
comfort food meal. And comfort food is the food that is tied to meals with a loved one, family memories, a place you travel to and had an amazing meal that reminds you of a great trip, a religious holiday, your state or country of origin. And when you look at the diet plans that exist, especially in my world of integrative functional medicine, they're very Eurocentric, monolithic, and they don't account for diverse people. Now, as you mentioned in your introduction, I'm a chief wellness officer at Great Wolf Resource for over 12,000 people, and I have been for another company previously. We have such a diverse workforce. I want to create a workforce where the vegans and vegetarians and paleo and meat lovers and chocoholics and carb lovers and the busy parents who were like, good Lord, let me grab whatever's in the refrigerator for my lunch and let's pray there ain't mold on it, right? All of us should be welcome at the lunch table. And my promise to
Mm.
this new company was I will not put anybody on a diet. Now, will I help you when you ask for better and best nutrition choices? Yes. And that was what we wanted to do in this protocol because we do need food that will fuel our brains to help us focus, find focus, tame anxiety, and sleep again, the promise of the book. But I wanted to biohack the nutrients or the macros that you were eating so that you didn't feel guilt, but I gave you an easy system to follow that most people who went through our research study are still following today. And can we can
Yes.
walk through them real quickly? They're weeks five
Yes,
and six of
please.
the
That is
protocol.
exactly what I would love for you to do. Go ahead.
So, if you're wondering, do I have a busy brain, high stress, I can't focus, ADHD, anxiety,
Mm.
sleep? Step one is to take the busy brain test. It's for free, 20 questions, 4 minutes. We'll put it in the show notes here. It's on my website and Instagram, drromie.com. At weeks 5 and 6, by the time you've restored sleep and your circadian rhythm, week 5, and every week we're like, schedule comfort food. We want to hear what comfort food you're eating. Week 5, we say this is if you're going to eat a high glycemic carbohydrate, white rice, white pasta, white bread, white sugar, white potatoes, then avoid caffeine 1 hour before and afterwards. So do not add sugar in your
Yes,
coffee or
I
honey.
saw that. And can
Yes.
you explain that?
Yes. And let's dig into the science. Or
Yes.
same thing, if you're going to have caffeine, no, none of those carbs. And here's the reason why. Mayo Clinic has described something they call insulin resistance type 3, diabetes type 3. There are insulin receptors in the brain. Now, they get triggered if I eat a high sugary meal, and that insulin is now using to calm the blood sugar levels in the brain because it's dangerous to have high or low blood sugars in the brain. That insulin is actually needed for other things, like for your brain cells to help you focus. So that constant buzz of blood sugars going up and down actually will disrupt your focus. But what happens when you add caffeine to that and the adenosine receptors are stimulated? These insulin receptors are suffering. It's like the airport traffic control tower is on fire and you just poured gasoline on it. And that's what happens when you combine the two in the brain. And that actually makes anxiety the hormones that yo-yo in your brain around anxiety and chemicals worse, and focus, the adult onset ADHD. So the first few days for
Wow.
most people are really hard. You notice, the drops in blood sugar, and because most of our high achieving professionals that do this choose caffeine, and then you get through it. And then week 6, yeah, we add healthy fats to every meal. And we make it easy. Like, I was on a podcast, girl came in, somebody's like, yes, I tell my executives who travel to take a can of anchovies. I'm like, that's lovely. But I live in the real world. Number one, 99.9% of both your and my
Oh,
community ain't going to buy no anchovies. And if you love anchovies,
yes.
great. Yay.
Nice.
But we ain't buying no anchovies. All I say, healthy fat, make it easy. Like, literally throw extra olive oil on the Caesar salad you made for your kids that Monday night. I do that for my lunch and dinners. At breakfast, it's, if I have time, cut avocado if I'm home. If not, it's healthy nuts on the go, adding MCT or coconut oil to whatever I'm drinking or eating, like steel cut oatmeal or yogurt, and you have at it and you go. Those two things alone made people so focused. You feel like you're in control of your day, in control of your schedule. And the best part, not only did the brain bloating go down by the end of the 8 weeks, so did the belly bloating
Yes, it's
and
all
the
tied
stress
together.
on the gut. And it's so tied together. And people went down a pant or a dress size, and you were still eating comfort food. So if it was your child's birthday, you had the cupcake and the ice cream, and everybody was happy.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. I love that too. It's really interesting because as I was reading, I was thinking of the people who are, grabbing the muffin and the coffee on the way to work, or the
Right?
afternoon slump at 3 o'clock when
Yes.
it's the
Tea and
cookie and the coffee.
biscuits.
Yes.
Yes.
Um,
Croissant and
everybody thinks,
espresso.
oh, these go together, but they really
Nope.
don't, not
No,
for the
no,
brain and the
not
insulin
it is. And that's the
resistance.
hardest thing to unpair. I get that. Or Coca-Cola and
Yes.
French fries, right? One or
Yes.
the other. That's
Oh,
it.
wow. I didn't even think about that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm.
Can we also talk about, for the listeners, so they understand, when you talked earlier about brain shift,
Yeah.
what that really is? Because that's also, and by the way, I'm going to say it again at the end, you have to read this book
Oh,
because
thank
it
you.
lays all this out.
Yeah.
So if this is interesting and piquing your interest, make sure you get the Busy Brain Cure. Okay, brain shift.
Brain shift. So step one, we already covered. I need, your credit score, you need to know your brain score, and at all times. And we make it easy for you in under, 4 minutes, 20 questions. If you're above a 30, you have chronic neuroinflammation happening. Above a 40, busy brain. Above a 60, busy brain with burnout, right? So one, I want to know your score. Brain shift is the protocol to get to the root cause and heal the busy brain. A brain shift is a micro habit that we researched for you to say stack these tiny habits or micro habits one on top of another, so they're not getting in the middle of your full day as a busy parent or caregiver or working mom or dad. And you can do them and not feel like you're suffering. And then the shift is for 5 key areas that we cover. S in the shift is for sleep or your circadian rhythm. We cover that already. H is for the role of hormones. I, markers of inflammation. F is the food. We just talked about that and how you fuel yourself. And T is the role of technology. And so we find when people have a busy brain, it's one of these 5 areas that's off, and we need to fix it.
I love that. Can we park on hormones for just a second?
Girl, yes, please. Yes.
So, everyone listening to this podcast, sorry if you're a man. I love you if you're here, but
Oh, I have advice from men
perimenopause.
too.
Yes,
Yes.
men need to read this too. We have both, and they're also going through hormonal shifts too. But one of the biggest complaints from women with perimenopause is the brain fog and the scatteredness. Some of them feel like they need to go find out if they are ADD or ADHD all of a sudden. So, can you speak to that? Are you finding women as they're going through perimenopause really struggling with
Yes.
this busy
Yes. Yes. Yes.
brain?
Yes, yes,
Mm.
yes. It is an entire different podcast episode of
Yes.
perimenopause, menopause, and busy brain, right?
Yes.
We have lab slips that if you have a busy brain, part of the protocol in week 7 is to get your labs checked. And we have separate labs for men and women, and we check hormones in both. First of all, when we talk about hormones, there are 50 hormones in the brain and body that govern everything. And it's not just our sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone in women, and testosterone about perimenopause. I want to share the story really fast of Kelly in chapter 16. Oh my God, Kim. Like, she was like every one of your listeners on the outside, a leading sales executive and leader in her company, winning awards. Privately, a mother of two and suffering crippling anxiety. And her doctor told her what I loathe to hear, but happens to so many women, and it's happened to me. You know what, Kelly? You're just a tired working mom who's now anxious. You need to either focus on the job or the kids and not do both. She was ready to quit this incredible job that she loved and where she excelled at. She begrudgingly joined the brain shift clinical research program we were doing for the company because her teammates were. Went and got the labs. Lo and behold, they do the entire hormone panel, which is full thyroid. They check estrogen, progesterone, FSH, LH, all the things, testosterone in women. And it turns out our thyroid hormones are completely off because we got a full thyroid panel. And the doctor, primary care doctor, who initially had dismissed her, is shocked and did the right thing and ordered an ultrasound emergently. She had a tiny nodule that you couldn't see just looking at her neck. That was a stage 1 cancer that was caught early. She had it removed and it saved her life. The anxiety went away. The busy brain improved. She is still a mom, still a leading sales leader in that company. I double click on this because there is a thyroid crisis in the United States. 1 in 8 women have an undiagnosed thyroid, either subclinical, low, or high thyroid. And primary care doctors are missing it because they're only checking 1 or 2 instead of the 8 labs that we have in the book. And by the way, your traditional insurance will cover these labs.
Oh,
They
that's
will get
wonderful.
covered. So
Yes.
this isn't those expensive integrative functional medicine labs that you could pay thousands of in the doctor's office. We wanted to make it affordable and simple for everyone. And that's what we did. And, so first thing is and by the way, this is important because if you're a woman in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s, so you have irregular periods, you're wondering if you have PCOS, you're wondering if it's early menopause, perimenopause, or menopause, we've missed the boat if we haven't checked your thyroid. And majority of women with this problem, Kim, what are their only symptoms? I can't focus and I'm anxious.
Yeah.
And so they get put on ADHD meds and anxiety meds, and we miss the thyroid.
I have so many women who just think they have lack of motivation also. They just think,
Yes.
I have no motivation. I can't get things
Mhm.
done. I'm all over the place. And it's interesting you brought this up.
So that's the adult
Yes,
onset ADHD that we talk about in the book.
yes. And,
And then
but
we get to the root cause and check these labs, and we can actually help them.
you can get to the I love that you brought up thyroid because the TSH number that people get done just with their cholesterol and glucose and all those things, it can even register at a low point, but sometimes behind the scenes, you talked about those 8 other hormones. If that full panel's not done, we don't see behind the
Yes.
scenes.
Yes.
And yes, a lot of
Yes.
women are going through
Yes.
that.
They
So
are.
thank you
Don't
for
get it.
bringing that. And you do
Yes.
bring up the getting the lab test done, which is really important. I think women now at least have a direction, and I appreciate you giving
Yes. Yeah.
some direction in here too,
Yes.
because people don't know what to do and they just start
Mhm.
and when they go to doctors, it's just, they're
Yes.
kind of blindfolded, just throwing a
It is
dart.
throwing things the darts. And then I want to answer the rest of it. Perimenopause. So thyroid, whether your thyroid is good or not, progesterone is protective to your brain, and so is estrogen. And the patriarchal medical system got it wrong. They have villainized hormones for women, and they have scared 40 and 50 and 60 something year old women of taking hormones, yet they've glorified alcohol. They did the reverse. So we started off this podcast talking about the, stimulant sedative cycle. You're on caffeine all day and alcohol all night. That is what is brutally dangerous to your hormones and your brain, even 1 drink a day, let alone heart disease, breast cancer, all of that. And the estrogen and progesterone is what can protect you. And then again, some of that progesterone deficiency that starts when we're chronically stressed out, because now pregnenolone, a key hormone, is now all being shunted to your adrenal gland to make cortisol because you're so stressed out that there ain't enough left over to make estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, right? Like, we need our hormones, sister. So get them checked. And hormones aren't the enemy. Go to a doctor that specializes in hormonal health. That's typically not a primary care doctor. it might be an OBGYN if they've done additional training in hormones.
I appreciate you bringing that up because hormones, on a personal level, hormones saved me and so
Yay.
many other people. And speaking of that, when I got my estrogen and progesterone straightened out, my anxiety went down. And I literally thought there was, I was going to live with the rest of my life worrying about everything. And that was one of the pieces. And just to everyone on the podcast who's been listening for a while knows I'm also hypothyroid.
Yeah.
Surprise. And it all goes together. So you are bringing this and you're wrapping this up in such a sweet bow. I appreciate it. I want to step back for a moment. You mentioned alcohol and I wanted to ask you
Oh,
about that.
yes. We're going to lose friends now
Yes, I
off
know. And
air.
I actually had to give it up a couple of years ago
Same.
because my brain could not handle it the next day. I
Oh
had
my God.
anxiety. So can we talk about that? Give me your thoughts and it's okay. Everyone, there's no judgment. Just
No judgment.
listen in for when you're ready.
Okay, here's three things. You and I both gave up alcohol. One of my spiritual teachers, a mindfulness teacher, says that when you're spiritually ascending and you're reaching place of wisdom, your body will automatically reject what doesn't serve you, like toxins, like sugar, negative people gossiping, and alcohol is one of them. So that's the spiritual side, right? The
Yes.
clinical side is I'm so glad we're recording this podcast today because just in the last 3 weeks prior, the largest ever meta-analysis, meaning they looked at every research study on alcohol for women specifically. Okay. The men, the data is just the same, but for women, and actually found that this idea of have one drink a day was actually manufactured by the alcohol companies and marketing. And that's not true. And this thing of, well, some of the healthiest countries in the world drink wine every day. Actually, no, because they're eating so well and they have social connections and they have sleep and work life balance and joy that they're counteracting the negative effect of the alcohol. Three, any of your listeners know I've traveled multiple times to France and Italy to amazing places with wine. When I'm with actual local French or Italian people, not in the tourist things, their wine glasses are truly that small 4 ounce pour, and they're maybe having one glass with an entire meal. Here in the United States, it's typically a 6 to 9 ounce pour with multiple drinks with food, right? So that's two. The third thing is, what did the meta analysis show? Is when we're having alcohol, it's actually multiplying the GABA receptors in the brain. And
Wow.
the alcohol initially will bind to it. So that's why you have that initial calm feeling. But alcohol metabolizes out of your brain really quickly. And now these GABA receptors in the airport traffic control tower and frontal lobe of your brain are screaming, Kim, Romie, give me more, help me. And then you get rebound anxiety. So what do people do? They drink again, or they drink even more, or eat even more. And so it's actually making the anxiety and mental health issues worse. Then we know we were looking at why did the study really get done? And I really want to dig into this because the medical system has failed women, not only our hormones. I went to medical school, girl, in the 1990s, right? We agreed you and I were cutting edge. Do you know it is 2024 when we record this podcast? Nothing has changed. In fact, it's gotten worse for women. That if you have a heart attack or stroke, you are 10 times more likely to die in the emergency room than a man. And same, why is breast cancer, despite all this awareness, going up? What was one of the key factors? The alcohol consumption.
Yes.
So, true story, I haven't shared this on any podcast. Despite, quote, doing all the things, I had a scare on my mammogram and diagnostic ultrasound last year with a cyst. It had to get biopsied. I'm okay. That was like the nail in the coffin that I'm not even going to have a drink once in a while for celebration. Like, you can pick your poison. So if you're not ready to give up alcohol, don't abandon Kim's amazing podcast. Go to iTunes and give it a 5-star rating, please. But I'm just going to say
Thank
to pick your
you.
poison. So me,
Yes.
I will pick rice and my potatoes. Not every day. I do it with my brain shift protocol, caffeine or the carbs, but I will tell you, I don't miss the alcohol. And to your point, the last time I tried it, my belly was in massive pain and then that anxiety and insomnia. And it was like half a glass of champagne and it was 4 or 5 days before I was normal again.
That's how I felt. My inflammation in my
Mhm,
body, my joints,
mhm.
my
Yeah,
face, everything was so high.
yeah,
And like I said, the anxiety, but I think it also has, we know it has the depressive effect after you've
mhm.
got the nice feeling. And it's funny how you said that. Also chose my not together coffee and chocolate. I said, I will not beat myself up for those. My nice
Yes,
organic coffee and
yes,
a little dark chocolate once in a while, but the alcohol had to go. And
yeah,
I'm really excited to hear that these studies are coming out
yeah,
because when we watch TV, I think about all of the biggest shows. I was just even watching Bridgerton, and I watched Yellowstone, all these different wonderful shows that we're all
yeah,
hooked
they
into.
normalize the
They
drinks,
normalize it, and
but
my
did they
husband yeah,
yes,
my husband said, "They are always drinking."
yes,
I was
okay,
like,
but by
"Wow."
the way, do you know that they are sponsors of a lot of these shows and the movies in the
Yes.
background to pay for production, and a part of the script or the set is you have to have so many scenes with beer, hard liquor, champagne, or wine. It's like they're normalizing it so that
Yes.
subconsciously and consciously you're seeing it and it normalizes it.
Yes, and this is another podcast altogether. It's funny, I'll be talking to my kids about this, growing up with watching your parents drink, how that
Oh,
affected their
mhm.
drinking and going to college and how they are now. And so we're passing when I think of this, I think of us women passing things down to our daughters and, a whole nother
Granddaughters,
yes,
nieces,
even
the
our
women
gut
that are
yep,
watching, the
gut
women that are
health,
watching us on
everything.
Instagram and they see you holding something. Oh, look, Kim, Dr. Romy, they're successful and they're holding a glass of champagne. I
Yes.
learned my lesson. Yeah.
Yes, I did. So good. I love this. That was a wonderful explanation to that. And again, we want everyone to do when you are ready, do what's right for you, which obviously we have an opinion on that. But I do want to share, just to kind of start rounding this out. You have a really great section in there on digital detoxing also. And what I'm really interested in talking about is how that is affecting us and possibly even affecting our decisions, whether it's to get something done, how we eat. We know it's affecting our sleep. One of the
Yeah.
biggest things that we are told to do is to get off those electronics before long enough before bed so that we can come down. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the digital
Yeah.
detoxing.
And, it was 2017 when I did the first study, putting 500 employees through digital detox in a company that ran operations 24 hours a day in hotels. And we did it 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime for 3 weeks. We made a challenge out of it. People had fun. And it was astounding. Half the people were able to do it and the other half not. So scientifically, we had a control group, right? And what happened was we saw the people that did the digital detox in 21 days, market improvement in sleep scores, anxiety scores, daytime energy, right? And doing better. And to this day, it's still one of the most requested challenges to do digital detox. So we love that. Um, as the studies have advanced, we see that multi-digital device use. So think about it as you're listening to this podcast on a smartphone or your laptop. You might have your laptop open, you might have a smart TV open, multiple things going during the daytime are actually also contributing to rewiring of the brain to create adult onset ADHD and difficulty focusing. And so then if you're sitting down to work, it's no wonder when you need to singularly focus on one task on your computer in front of you or listen to a conversation and take physical notes, it's really hard to focus. And that's what's happening. And so we talk about digital detox in week 3 of the protocol, and that's ending meetings, that we're on early so you can step away for your digital devices 5 to 10 minutes every hour, and then 30 minutes to 60 minutes before bedtime.
That's so powerful, and it's interesting to me too, just getting off of the phone just because of the electronic part and having all these stimulations in our room and in our eyes and periphery, it's all over the place. But what I think people do not understand is how many times subconsciously, unconsciously, I'm not really sure what the right word is, they are picking up that phone. And a client of mine, we decided to check her stats. And by, I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning, she picked up her phone 32 times. And that is just that habit
It is.
that
And that's
everybody
normal, by
reaches.
the way. There's
Yep.
no judgment of her. That's
Right.
all of us.
There's no
I
judgment.
mean, look, you're not seeing the video, but I have one big screen
Mhm.
here, one here, laptop here, and two phones in front of me. There is
I
constantly something
there's
pinging,
something going
but we're
on
going
all
to
the
end this
time.
interview and I'm going to take a 10-minute break. And then how do you do it is we control my schedule. And I have an amazing EA, chief of staff, who does this. I schedule the times to check my social media, to do my emails, and I typically have my text messaging and everything on silent. And there's a time that I check my phone, right?
Yes.
My elderly parents or loved ones, their messages will come straight through, but they know not to bug me unless something is going on during the workday. So when you control your busy brain, you get to control your schedule. And then you don't
Yes.
feel this need to pick up and go everywhere.
Exactly. I love
Yeah.
that because I also share with the listeners to take those mini breaks throughout the day. Get outside, look at the sun, take a moment to look out the window, put everything away. Oh, Dr. Rumi, you've given us such beautiful advice today. You've explained so many things, our busy brain and how we can bring that
Yeah.
down. Would you please share with everyone where they can find you? I personally follow you on Instagram, but
Thank
share
you.
where can we find you and is the book everywhere?
Yes. So thank you. Thank you for celebrating me. We started in a STEMinist moment and we'll end in a STEMinist moment. Did you know that blessed that my book came out in January of 2024 and in week one hit the USA Today bestseller list. And the publisher HarperCollins called. And I remember the editor or assistant editor telling me something like, I knew what a big moment it was, but that even today, there is like a 500-to-1 ratio that a male MD or PhD gets a traditional book contract over a woman.
Oh, well,
Thank you. And we
congratulations.
and we do this, and I say this out loud so that we're modeling to the other women what's possible. I want you to know, because I healed my busy brain and I practice brain shift, I am just celebrating my 50th birthday. I am cognitively sharper today than when I was 25 and graduated from medical school. I want that for every woman that's listening. And to do that, step one, we will put it in the show notes, the Busy Brain Test. Take it for free. You can find it on all my social media, Dr. Romie, Romie, on my website for free. The book, The Busy Brain Cure, is available in hardcover. It is available on Kindle and Audible. We have a course online. If you don't have the patience to read a book, we will give you the protocol any way you like to digest it. Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you so much for bringing so much light to the
Thank you.
podcast today. I appreciate you.
It's an honor to serve. Have a wonderful comfort food meal with your family. I plan to do the same, and I hope the listeners will share their favorite comfort food with us.
Oh, absolutely. And nourish your entire life and give yourself grace today.